What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of BlueTruth Rangers Talk with myself, Brian Attard, powered by the Sports Box. It is August the 12th. Summer's flying by, although it's just ridiculously hot out. I hope wherever you guys are, it's not as hot as it is in South Jersey because it is unbearably hot. So hopefully you guys are cooler than I am. Alec, nice prompt. I like that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. We love playing with the video. It's always good stuff. Listen, guys, a lot really to talk about tonight. And I know it's like the center of the off season, but man, I mean, there's all stuff to be discussing with the Rangers, and it never seems to stop. I guess we'll get started. First and foremost, this baseball Field of Dreams game. It's nice and everything. I'm a Yankee fan, so I have it on the TV right here. But let's not pretend that they didn't copy off of hockey, right? Okay. Hockey had this idea. They had Winter Classics. They had a game in Lake Tahoe. It's just, call it what it is. They stole the idea from hockey. So, it is what it is there. And also, we always love to razz on the New York Islanders on this show. The Seattle Kraken haven't played a single NHL game, and yet they've got more followers on Instagram than the New York Islanders. So that's always fun to laugh at the fact that one of our chief rivals nobody cares about. So we will kick it off in earnest tonight. For those of you who remember, it was a year ago this week that something happened that you will never forget where you were when it happened.
It is now time to see who the winning team is.
The first selection in the 2020 NHL Draft belongs to the New York Rangers.
Wow, there it is.
1 year ago this week, luck shined upon us, the Ranger fan base, and they won the draft lottery. A 12.5% chance, 1 out of 8. And that Ranger ball came up, and it was euphoria. I've been known to say in a lot, obviously I do some podcasts, that aren't hockey, that aren't Rangers on the Sports Box Network, which this is powered by. And, I've always said, if you're not going to win, lose. And if that wasn't the epitome of why that's important when you were trying to build a long-term contending roster, everything worked out great that day. After that ping pong ball came out, I lost my voice for 4 days, and that is not an exaggeration. That happened. So, I work in a job in financial sales, and I have to be on the phone all day long. And so that was fun. I had to tell my boss, listen, I can't do anything. This is my voice. And that was the reality of it. And again, no regrets. It is what it is. I love the team. And we mentioned this last week in talking about, the draft picks, and we'll get to a couple of different things, but it was so important, guys, as we mentioned last week, because they couldn't screw it up. The obvious pick was Alexis Lafreniere, the same way that the obvious pick was Kaapo Kakko the year before. And it didn't matter if, Lafreniere busted, because it wasn't them taking Lafreniere was the obvious pick. If Kakko bust, everybody was wrong on Kakko. If Lafreniere bust, everybody was wrong on Lafreniere. It wasn't the Rangers being the smartest people in the room picking a guy off the board. You remember Elias Anderson, for example, a prime example of what the Rangers have done. And you can go back and look through the annals of time, the Dylan McElraths, the Stefan Cherneskys, the names, the Pavel Brendel, Jamie Lundmark, all of these guys that the Rangers wasted pick after pick after pick after pick on in the first round. And that is why they were never really building at that time. It didn't even matter that they were trading first-round pick, because they couldn't draft in the first round for anything. So it was so important that they had this pick because they couldn't screw it up. And that in and of itself, the value, it was there. Notably, Also, speaking of first-round picks, first-round pick of 2021, Brennan Othman, has been signed to an entry-level deal earlier today. As has been well documented on this show, he is not a center. That's a problem. But again, player wasn't a reach by any stretch. He was a guy who would have normally gone, in that area of the first round. So it was not my position of choice. I do not run the team. We neither of us do, but we all were, a little flabbergasted that they have specifically ignored the center position. Alex Trubisky blew out his knee, so hard to kill them for that one. Well, look, I'm not going to, rest his soul. We're not going to blame the Rangers for Alexei Cherepanov, right? I mean, I'm just saying they've screwed that up. What feels like way more than other teams. Now, is that because we focus on it more? Maybe. And that's obviously fresh in our minds. But, they, it's one of those things where, you don't really have a lot of the faith that they're going to fix things, more times than not. So, again, the fact that they couldn't screw it up was worth its weight in gold. Just as we were getting off the show last week, and I mean just as we were getting off the show, the Rangers acquired wing Ryan Reaves from the Vegas Golden Knights for a 2022 third-round pick. Why? That's why. Reaves has been known to say, "I am your Tom Wilson problem solver," and he's done that once or twice to Tom Wilson. I really wasn't surprising to me at all. I don't think it was surprising to anybody who watches the show, simply because it just felt like that was so obvious. Of course they traded for Ryan Reaves. Why wouldn't they? For the simple reasons that I just showed you in that video, right then and there. Kevin Gersh, new name to the show, sick of hearing about Wilson. Me too, man. Me too. I think that there has been a huge overreaction by the ownership of the team, which has then led to the front office decisions the team has made. And I think they're trying to solve a problem that, really was horrifically overblown given the way that the schedule was last year, where they only played teams in their own division. You're not going to see Tom Wilson or the Washington Capitals 8 times this year. You think see him 4. So Kevin Levasseur, again, another new name. We appreciate everybody watching and chiming in. So far, Drury has made me nothing but nervous as he's making top decisions. We'll talk about some of that. I can understand, where you're coming from there, because there are some things that you look at him at face value and say, I don't really know what you're doing there. We'll talk about that. Absolutely. A lot to talk about tonight. Keith Gersh, who cares about that loser? Unfortunately, the Rangers front office does. And that's colored a lot of the decisions that they've made since the incident happened. Need to focus on completing the rebuild. I could not agree more. I hope we're really in the 9th inning of it. I feel that we are. But things are, interesting from where they were compared to now. Again, like I said, I'm not surprised they got Ryan Reaves. Why? Gerard Gallant is the head coach of the New York Rangers. And, if you look back at Ryan Reaves, his career year was under Gerard Gallant in 2018-19 in Vegas. He had 9 goals, 11 assists. Actually, 3 of those goals were on the power play. He's a fourth-line guy. He's not going to probably play every game. He'll sure as hell play every Capitals game. That we all know. But if you look at the deals combined, like if you look at it where, they had sent Brett Howden to Vegas for a 4th-round pick right before the expansion draft. So put them all together. It's Howden and a 3 for Reaves and a 4. I mean, you don't really care that much. So it's not like this massive trade payment was there. But at the same time, is this move, is this the final move of the get bigger, get gritty, that reaction to the Tom Wilson episode, that reaction to the Islanders games toward the end of the year where obviously a couple players weren't playing, to be fair? It seems like, this offseason, and it doesn't seem like it has been, this offseason has been, get rid of some of the skill and add that grit. Sammy Blais, traded. Barclay Goodrow, big contract. Patrick Nemeth, 3rd pair defenseman. Dryden Hunt, Jared Tenorti, Ryan Reaves. It's enough now, right? I think that the overcorrection is to the point where are you even going to be able to play all of these guys? James, these issues were pre-Wilson. Finally, toughness has been addressed, though it is sacrificing talent. I'm not saying they didn't need to revamp the fourth line, James, but I just think that they've taken it to a degree that none of us really thought they would actually do, right? Because in their efforts to transform the bottom six, they've really brought in guys who are not really going to add a lot of offensive punch. They'll add some other kinds of punches, but not offensive. And a couple of discussions. Chris, I will get to your comment a little later in the show. I will be addressing that, obviously, in detail. Mike Epstein, to me, it was more than Wilson. Teams fear nobody on this lineup. Now they'll think twice rather than not thinking at all. I'm not saying, Mike, I'm not saying that you're wrong. You and I have talked about that, offline personally, and I get it. Like, I'm not saying that they didn't need to do something, but I just think that what they've done is just over the top. It's too much. It's too much. And I think that you're just going to end up not seeing a lot of these guys. And they went ahead, obviously, and extended Reeves' contract at age 34 because you had to do that, right? You had to figure that part of it out. So, it is what it is. Chris says wingers going into the dirty areas knowing they have backup. Savior, love the move. We're always soft now with the Reeves. We're not anymore. I get all that. I'm not disputing any of that. What I will say is there is a sect of this fan base that's all about that. It's like the not necessarily like the violence, but like the fighting, the things like that. And I just think that the game's moved past that. Maybe the physical nature is obviously always going to be there, but I think that the guys who, would Dave Schultz wouldn't play in the league anymore. Would Bob Probert have a spot in the league? Would Ty Domi have a spot in the league these days? Like, and I think that guy, that role is dead. We'll see if Reeves can be more than that role. Reeves may not play every game. He might be saved, obviously, for, the more rough and rowdy games, if you will. But, I have my thoughts. I think they've overdone it a little bit. I think now we can pump the brakes on that. Alex says, at least it didn't give Reeves a no trade. Yeah, absolutely not. Kevin Garish have to drop it. That's really good. Hey, Kevin, listen, we're Keith. I'm sorry. I can't. My Red Bull wore off. This will be live. It'll be recorded on YouTube. You can watch the Facebook replay. Feel free. Obviously, appreciate you interacting for sure. We love that here on the show. The biggest news, I think, was the contract extension for Igor Shesterkin. So the Rangers have signed their netminder to a 4-year deal. It's a 5.65 AAV. That's the highest ever for a goaltender in his second contract. So I've kind of gone back and forth on this. I would say that for that AAV, I probably would have preferred a 5 or a 6-year term. I think if you were getting into that mid-5 area, if you were at like 5 or lower, that 4.5, maybe you go Carter Hart signed for example, though he's much younger in Philadelphia. I don't think you bought out enough of the UFA years in this deal. And given that, right, is it a little high? Maybe, right? But then, what's not high? Like, it was $5 million okay? Like, are you going to squabble over $650,000? I mean, I know we're in a cap league and a flat cap, and I understand that every dollar counts, but at the same time, you clearly have a lot invested in this player. This is the goalie of the future. And, a lot of people say, well, he's only played 2 years. They haven't even been real years. They've been kind of like 3/4 type years, and he's had injury issues. I mean, look, he got into a car accident, guys. Let's call it what it is, right? He turns 26 in December, so he'll be 29 when this deal ends. He was dominant in the KHL over in Russia, which is, it rivals the AHL and maybe even a little bit better, obviously, because it's professional talent in a higher league where he was so dominant there. It's not as if this is a kid who's never played professional hockey coming in. Chris says, who set that market for Igor? I think you look at the Thatcher Demko deal in Vancouver. I think you look at even like a Grubauer. We've got a little bit more than that in Seattle. Again, it is New York, but his numbers and his play, I mean, really the sky is the limit for him. And it really has been for a very long time. He was always like that best player, not the best goalie, not in the league. I think he's better than Sorokin personally. I like Sorokin. I hate the Islanders, but I do like the player. I think the sky is the limit for a guy like Shesterkin. So I'm okay with the deal. If you want to be concerned, it's not that the current AAV is a concern, because if you think back to the contending years when Hank was here, he was paid a larger amount on a team that was contending when the cap was much lower. So, this is not $8 million when the cap's in the 60s. This is $5.5 million when the cap's in the 80s. It does make a big difference. I guess my concern, and I want to hear from you guys on this, who's live. This contract will end when he is 29. So we're going to talk about Mika Zibanejad's contract towards the end of the show. The concern for me would be that when he hits age 29, he may want a 7 or 8 year deal, similarly to the one that Lundqvist had. That was a very long deal, which ended when he was about 38, 39. So there's precedent that the Rangers have done that. Again, different front office to a degree. That would be the concerning part for me, is that they're going to run into a situation in 4 years where he could really cash in. I mean, I'm not saying Carey Price cash in, but this could easily be an $8.5 million goalie, the way Vasilevsky is, 9 even, by the time this deal is done. So if anything's concerning, I think that would be what's concerning. It isn't the 5.65. I mean, again, the 4 years is not what I would have preferred to see. But at the same time, you have to sign the player. You're not gonna squabble over $500,000 a year. So, Tolian, Berezan, Hank was a much better goalie at Shesterkin's age. Yes, well, he was more of an established goalie at Shesterkin's age. I would say that Shesterkin hasn't really had the runway in the NHL to have Hank-like numbers. And again, it's not a Hank contract. Where you're looking at this in 4 years is what will happen then. His health consistency is more concerned than his salary. Again, yes and no. I mean, the car accident's the car accident. I'm not really going to blame him for that. He did miss some time this year. People get hurt. I mean, that is the reality of things. But I understand where you're coming from. That's not really much of a concern for me. Matt DeRosa, no way Lou gives a deal like that to Sorokin, just saying maybe not. And he might lose him. He might be okay with that. Listen, Lou's a penny pincher. I understand that. Lou had a cap before hockey had a cap. So I understand that. I get it. But they're also paying Varlamov this kind of money as well. And he's 30 or 31. Like, he's up there in age. Mike Salazzo, in 4 years, the cap will be up enough to cover his salary. I'm going to bring the cap up later in the show. It's a very similar point to that you're making here, but it's yes and no to your question on the other side of it. We will absolutely talk about that. So again, Igor's deal is fine. I think both sides can say they got something out of it. Igor's going to get a chance to get another deal at 29. The Rangers get him at a reasonable number that they can work with. Again, I think the Rangers wanted to give him a longer contract at a lower AAV. I think he wanted a higher contract, a shorter at a higher. They probably met in the middle, if you will. But he's here. And again, if you look at the goalies around the league, I mean, are we really going to say it's not a top 10 goalie in the league? Because if he's not there now, he'll be there soon, and that they're going to need that. You don't necessarily need the all-star goalie to win, although Tampa has one of those. He isn't really necessarily the reason that they win. He is a reason that they win. He is not the reason that they win, the way that Hank was the reason the Rangers were relevant for most of Hank's career. I don't know. Again, Hank was his idol growing up. I mean, there's a lot of parallels So I think this is going to work out just fine. I am not as concerned. John Canyon said, I don't have a problem with Igor's deal. John, I don't either. Again, is it exactly what the Rangers wanted? No, but it takes two sides to tango. There's two sides to the negotiation. So you have to give to get. And I think that both sides can be pretty happy, with where they are right now. And then, speaking of goalies, it's been brought up a little bit in the chat for those who are watching live. Again, if you're watching live on Facebook and Twitter, please share your comments. I'd love to interact with you guys, whether you're watching on the BlueTruth channel, the Sportsbox channel, or the BlueTruth Twitter. Obviously, please comment. We love to hear about it. If you're watching on the YouTube recording, thank you, but feel free to watch live. Always like that. Usually Thursdays, 8:30. We usually post to the Facebook page when we're going to do that. But there's all this talk of Georgiev wanting a deal. And then there's this pesky little idea that Henrik Lundqvist is currently without a contract. And if he is to be cleared, could he make a royal return to the Rangers in a backup mentor role? And do we even want that? I don't think it comes without a level of risk. And I don't mean him specifically, right? Because, look, we know who Hank is. He really didn't love that role a couple of years ago as that he was third wheel at the time. It was not an overly comfortable situation, but could he come back for one more year, make it a retirement from the Rangers the right way with people there, the whole nine? Yeah, he could if he gets cleared. And that's obviously, a big thing for all of it. But then the question becomes, do we want that? And what I mean by that, it's hot in New Jersey. The air's on, but still. Would he be a distraction from what the team is doing? Like this, does he then become like the storyline? Like, when's Hank going to play? When's Hank going to play? And I think he might decide some of that. I don't know. I mean, I will say that fans are going to want it. I think face of the franchise. No one's ever wearing number 30 again, obviously. It wouldn't be $8.5 million anymore. It'd probably be one or less. But again, if you move Georgiev out, he's making 2.4, I want to say. So, if Hank comes in at half of that, or even a little more than half of that, or I'm sorry, less than half of that, then sure, it's cash savings. You could do something with the cap room if you choose to. We'll talk about somebody who may or may not fill that need. Comments are coming in. James says no to Hank. We screwed him his last year by doing that. We got screwed. Again, I would disagree with that until the cows come home, because he couldn't be here. And they couldn't afford him that year. Just because you move some money out into the future doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You and I view buyouts completely differently. And that's okay. You're obviously free to your opinion. I respect that. They're not this punitive thing. It just spreads 2/3 of it over a longer period of time. And you're fine with that. Toy says, I wouldn't mind seeing Hank back. Mike Epstein, I think Hank deserves a better send-off. I'm okay bringing him back for a year and trade Georgiev. I'm perfectly fine with that. Georgiev could be a piece in a much larger deal for a player that we're probably all sick of talking about, but we're going to talk about it pretty soon. Who knows? Alec, no to Hank. It's time to move on. John, a really good point here. As soon as Igor has a bad game, the fans will want Hank to start. And again, you cannot manage a team by what your fans want, clearly. What the hell do we know? But that's what I'm trying. Like, does his presence, does that become an issue? Because it's him. Like, it's not a run-of-the-mill guy. I mean, this is the greatest goalie to ever put your jersey on, bar none. And I will put him ahead of Mike Richter. I understand that Richter won the Stanley Cup. I take nothing away from that. That is the biggest moment this franchise has had. But from a pure talent standpoint, it's Hank, right? I mean, we can all agree there. It doesn't. If Hank, it's. We're not going to get into a pissing match on Hank versus Richter, but nobody's wearing 30 again ever. That number's getting retired. James, he was also not very good 2 years ago. It's fair. I actually was at his last game at the Garden against the Flyers, where he got shelled, but he hadn't played in a while. Julian Narduzzi, why bring Hank back? Defeats the purpose of the buyout. It doesn't defeat the purpose of the buyout because they had to get under the cap that year. They needed that space. So I hear what you're saying, but not really. Not really. Robert, is he better than Kincaid? That's the only question that matters. I mean, Keith Kincaid was brought in. Robert, I don't think Keith Kincaid was brought in to actually play. I think that kind of happened because of circumstance. But like he was brought in so they have somebody to expose to Seattle, and they didn't want to expose Georgiev. Which a lot of teams did stuff like that. A lot of teams, built their rosters knowing that the expansion draft was coming and did accordingly. So I hear what you're saying. Tolian says start Talbot. Where'd he go? Is he still in Minnesota? I don't even know. James said we could have had the cap space. Tony D could have been moved. Yeah, but again, they weren't going to do that. You focus so much on these buyouts. That doesn't come back to haunt you that much. It really doesn't. It's just some dead money. The money still would have had to been paid that year. So you hurt yourself. I have zero issue with Minnesota's buyouts of Parise and Suter because those players stink. So it's a sunk cost, and now I don't have to watch them play on my team. So again, I will disagree with your extreme anti-buyout mentality. But again, I respect your point in having it. Toya, is Hank versus Richter the same as MJ versus LeBron? No. Because Hank and Richter are both loved and no one likes LeBron James. Just saying. So we'll see. I'm not saying this is going to happen. It's not going to happen. It can. If he gets cleared. And that's the first thing. So, Jack Eichel. The topic that will not die. Jack Eichel, as of the airing of this show, is still a member of the Buffalo Sabres. Larry Brooks reports that Chris Drury is telling agents that the Rangers are never really interested. Sure. I doubt that tremendously. Kevyn Adams, the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, really is a goddamn terrible card player. I mean, could he have handled this any worse? Right. Everything that's gone on in Buffalo has been terrible, right? He gets injured. They won't let him have the surgery. They won't trade him. He's requested to have the surgery and to be traded. It's getting to the point now where if he doesn't have the surgery like yesterday, the most aggressive of timelines say he would not be back for the start of the season. And that's the aggressive timeline. It's not the conservative one where he has time to rehab and everything else. So Kevyn Adams is an idiot. There is going to have to be a trade here at some point, but probably, and it has to happen, obviously, I think, before Eichel gets that no movement clause, and he really controls the flow of everything. But how is anything that has happened a positive for Buffalo? You can't tell me that his value has in any way, shape, or form increased. If anything, the further we get, the longer we go, his value is going to decrease, because if he's even going to be ready for the start of the season, with some talk he might miss longer than that, the longer this goes. Like at some point, I think he has to file agreements with the union, because like this is becoming a humanitarian thing. Let the guy have surgery. So I've been a very vocal proponent of getting Jack Eichel pending the price. But the time is ticking. It may have already passed. We may be past the point of no return for him to be ready for the start of the season. So now, even the most bullish of us on the Rangers side of things, who thought that, obviously we could go in there, get him for a song, and he could become the number one center on the team, or at least 1A or 1A, 1B. Talk about that. You're running out of time to get this done. I have no idea what Kevyn Adams is doing. I have this asset, and the longer I hold on to this asset, it's worth less and less. I am holding a gallon of milk with an expiration date, basically. I am selling produce that is starting to go bad. And I can't imagine, I can't envision a scenario where anyone would think, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the Rangers, the Sabres, the Ducks, the Wild, whoever are these teams that have been rumored to be in on, where the Rangers would increase their offer because there's more and more uncertainty. I don't know. I think this might be the worst general managing I've seen in a long time. Like, at some point, like, you've done this to yourself. The only reason that a guy like Jack Eichel is available is because the Buffalo Sabres are managed by morons. The same morons who apparently are threatening to move the Buffalo Bills to Austin, Texas. Different show, Tuesday nights on the Sports Box, highly opinionated. But why? You are doing this to spite yourself. The agents have come out and said, look, this is not working. You said we wanted a trade before free agency started. We didn't get it. We wanted to have a surgery. You won't let him do that. And what do you want him to do? What is he supposed to do? Mike Epstein, I'm surprised he hasn't filed a grievance. Not sure what the rules are, but yes, I agree. And Chris's point too. Longer it goes, the price should drop. I completely agree. All this talk of, they're going to give up Kakko and this and that. By the way, follow @SabresBuzz on Twitter. Dude's a moron. Anyway, like, all these concerns that people had, I don't see it. I don't think that the people that we thought were going to possibly get traded are going to get traded. Not now. I mean, the thought was, and I don't believe Drury for a minute. Not even close. I mean, Brooks can say whatever he wants. And Brooks was, Jim Schmiedeberger of Blue Shirt Underground, who I love those guys. Make sure you're following them on all the socials because they do phenomenal work. He said it from the jump, is ever since the front office changed over, Sather's back dropping. Larry Brooks is in like Flynn, and he's getting all the stories, not these, the bloggers and the Athletic and everything else. So you kind of have to look at it now and wonder, like, how much of what he says is dripped by the team for a reason, like they want it public for a reason. We're in that spot now where you kind of have to, like, question why this story is out and what are the Rangers trying to do, because they have a guy like Brooks who will write whatever they tell him to, is what I feel. I think stats will bear that out. Justin Thomas, Kevyn Adams thinks he's going to get a haul. Well, Kevyn Adams is an idiot. He is in way over his head at this point. And I think that when you have a player this irate, he's not coming back. I can't envision a scenario, and I don't know if you guys either, that Jack Eichel plays another game in that Buffalo jersey. I can't see it. I can't see it. Not after everything that happened. I mean, from a human standpoint, let the guy have his surgery. Like, I don't get it. And then this Robin Leonard comes out and says that, when he was in Buffalo, I think it was an ankle or a foot or something, and they had him on the bike in a week. You're supposed to have 6 to 8 weeks of rest. It's bizarre. I mean, there is a reason that team is in the horrible shape that it's in, because they've had high picks. Usually, Chris, what package would you give? So the initial package that I had come up with, which I'm still fine with, because I thought that this would be okay. It was Ryan Strome, mostly because center for center, and the money's got to go back the other way. Vitaly Kravtsov, the key piece, younger guy. Now, at the time, they had Buchnevich, so now you got to look at it again. I mean, cross that bridge. I still think they'd figure out some way to get Riley Smith from Vegas, but Kravtsov, Zach Jones, who is duplicative in New York. I don't think they really necessarily need a Zach Jones. We'll talk about the defense in just a second. and a first-round pick. So I would still do that. And overwhelmingly, I thought that the people that watch this show and people have interacted with on social media, they don't want to give up Kravtsov. You're not going to get him for nothing. Of all the higher-end prospects, again, he would be the one that would make the most sense, because clearly you are not going to trade Alexis Lafreniere. Not going to happen. You are not going to trade Capo Caco. Not going to happen. But you would think about trading Vitaly Kravtsov, because of the three, he is the most available. Doesn't mean you want to do it, but again, you're getting Jack Eichel. You are getting the one thing on your team that you do not have, and that is a long-term number one center. Robert said, Eichel should get the surgery, become a UFA. You know, I can't imagine it's that easy, because he probably would have done it by now. But I can't imagine that it's that easy. Mike, I agree. Don't know what it was, but thank you. I appreciate that. Akuluka, can you rap? You speak so fast. I have been known to do a very, very great rendition of Forgot About Dre in karaoke. There's video of it somewhere, which you will not see. But I did pretty well. I do generally talk fast. Northeast, I'm on the phone a lot. My boss tells me that too. John, Leonard blasted Buffalo's medical staff. Yup. And I think that that's a big, I mean, Leonard's pretty well respected out there in the hockey world. So I think when he comes out and says something like that, people start to really pay attention to that. And for all the Jack Eichel is a crybaby crowd, which I think is ridiculous to begin with, maybe not. Maybe they're just an inept management team full of morons. Julian says Eichel's using his no movement clause to control his fate, possibly. But that's not imminent, so he's going to lose time as well. So, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that he's got that kind of time to wait. Chris said, I can see that hurt Hedl. Mike Salazzo, I'd flip Hedl for Kravtsov. Yeah, listen, I'm not opposed to moving Philip Hedl, because he has, I mean, look, he's 21, right? That's the thing, is like, you know, we keep using these kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old, and we're like, wow, they've been here for 3 years. Why aren't they superstars yet? I mean, yeah, but I mean, we all get very excited about it, but we're also horrifically impatient. But at the same time, is their best chance to win next year before Zibanejad gets a deal, whether it's here or not? Who knows? Anthony Formosa, Rangers need someone to dominate the face-off circle. Anthony, I know you're pretty happy with some of their moves. You were all about the fisticuffs. We talked about that at length. Mike Salazzo, stud center at 24 is a no-brainer. If we can get him, we can get him. But we'll be talking about that. Boris, sure, I wouldn't include Kravtsov. I think the kid has high-end skills. He does. And now that Buchnevich is gone, there is a spot to showcase those high-end skills in the top six. So, and that played a role, obviously, in Buchnevich being sent away. But you have to give to get. So that's as Eichel turns. We're still waiting. I will tell you that every time I get a Twitter alert from Larry Brooks or any of the other Rangers people that I follow, my heart goes up to here, because I am dreading them overpaying. I have 5 untouchables. I've maintained that I have 5 untouchables from the jump of these discussions. 10, 13, 23, 24, and 31. And the only one of those people that I think has the smallest shred of shot of being traded is 24. And I just hope that I don't see that. I think that would be less than intelligent. And to Chris's point, is the risk too great? Yes and no, because depending what you give up, again, if he's hurt, it goes off your cap. People don't, you know, look at Kucherov. Okay, he was hurt all year. LTIR didn't count. So, Anthony, all about the protecting our assets and their development. Yeah, I get it. I understand where you were coming from. I've never said I didn't understand. I just said I disagreed with it at the time. I understand your point. Akul Luka, who will score more points this season, Lafreniere or Stützle? Lafreniere. Lafreniere is going to play with better players next year than Stützle will. And that takes nothing away from Ottawa. I think they're a team on the come up as well, like the Rangers. But they're not there yet. The Rangers are ahead of them. I think Lafreniere, everybody wants to like attack him for like not having 60-point equivalent last year, but at the same time, look, it was not like the weirdest year we all lived through. Like, let it go. In the news, Former New York Rangers defenseman Neal Pionk signs a 4-year deal with the Jets, $5.75 million AAV. And obviously, as you remember, he had a cup of coffee with the Rangers. So let's take a look back and figure out how we got here. So, yes, it is very easy to attack Jacob Trouba. I am not going to sit here and tell you that Jacob Trouba has been an $8 million a year player so far, because frankly, he has not. How much of that is coaching? I don't know. We're going to find out. But I can't lambaste the Rangers for a couple things here. Number one, when the deal was made, Jacob Trouba was 25 years old and coming off a 50-point season. 6'3", 209. He was something that the Rangers didn't really have. And might I remind you, revisionist history, that Neal Pionk was fucking terrible here. I went to many a game where he looked lost in his own zone. He looked terrible. Was that coaching? Maybe. Lindy Ruff. But he was nothing more than a throw-in in this deal. And nobody was overly concerned about losing Neal Pionk when the deal was made. You were getting a 25-year-old defenseman coming off a 50-point season. RFA had to give him a deal. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the deal's worked out financially. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. But what I'm saying is what they gave up for him in the trade was the throw in Neal Pionk and the first-round pick that they got back from Winnipeg for 2 weeks of Kevin Hayes. From a cost standpoint, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I mean, they really got killed in the deal. So I'm not going to say that. Here's where people lose me. Al DeMoro, who I very much respect and like, he's in a lot of the Ranger groups that I'm in. I really do respect his viewpoints on certain things. We're normally yin and yang. We're normally disagree on a lot of things. Al, if you're watching, again, full respect to your views. I mean, I love talking hockey with you. Here's what I'll disagree with him on this. Is he said that Pionk should still be here. How many right-handed 6-foot guys did you want the Rangers to have? Because if you go back in time, and yes, everything changes when you're like 3-4 years removed from things. All of a sudden, of course that was the case. Well, no. I mean, be realistic. How many of these guys do you want the Rangers to have at the time of the deal? Actually, before we even get to that, right now, let's just look at it right now. Fox 5'11", Nils Lundqvist 5'11". Trouba's the only righty with size at 6'3". So if your D pair, if your right side D was Fox, Lundqvist, and Pionk, Pionk's the tallest guy at 6 foot. So it doesn't work. And remember too that when Trouba was brought in, it was Kevin Shattenkirk that was given the boot. Shattenkirk was here, D'Angelo was here, Pionk was here, and then Adam Fox was on the way. So you had 4 guys for 3 spots. Replace Pionk with Trouba, you have 4 guys for 3 spots. They made the decision that they were going to go with Tony D'Angelo in the third pairing, which worked out. Regardless of what you think of him as a person, I'm not getting into that tonight. Regardless of how it ended, I'm not getting into that tonight. He had a good year that year. He had a very good year that year. Didn't really lead to anything, but he had a very good year that year. And I always thought that he was just a stopgap until they brought Nils Lundqvist up, who had already been drafted. So it's just, how many guys do you want that are a very similar build and type of guy? I mean, look, Pionk's not going to blow anybody away with his defensive skills. It's not what he is. So, James, awful trade. Again, you're the one that wanted to wait 7 years for all this. You didn't like. You probably didn't like him signing Panarin either. You wanted them to go into complete death for 5 years, and I don't think necessarily that was ever going to happen. I mean, they did what they did, and they did it very well in a very short period of time. But they were never going to just go complete death for half a decade. Mike said he would still do the deal. Put the C on Trouba, he'll rise to the occasion. Remains to be seen. Again, to this point, he has not been an $8 million a year player. No question about that. Can he be? Maybe. Julian, I'd argue that the Trouba Miller D pairing was fantastic. Miller carries like a veteran, if you ask me, and Trouba can fight. Yeah, I see, but again, if you think about it, so it's a D pair. Like the guy you play with does have an impact on how you play as well. So I don't think he's necessarily even again. Miller was still a kid. I think he's got a very bright future, but still a kid. So Trouba had to kind of show him the ropes. He hasn't really been like paired with another. I mean, I think it was Trouba and Shea at one point. Then Shea was a disaster. He was traded. James says, doesn't matter how or where the first round pick was obtained. That's not relevant. Do you really care? Would that make a difference to the team right now? If that first round pick, what would it have done? Wouldn't be playing yet. Another guy for the cupboard. Isn't the cupboard already full? How many more guys do you need? You have guys you can't play as it is. They got that first round pick back for Brady Shea because Brady Shea stinks. And that was a gift. Brady Shea for a first round pick was a gift. The gift that keeps on giving. The pick and the cap space. It all works out in the end. Toya says Shattenkirk was such a mistake. Well, yes, in retrospect, because they went into rebuild after signing Kevin Shattenkirk. That was not the plan at the time. They were trying to extend whatever window they thought that team had, which clearly wasn't very long. But they were trying to do that. He was year one of a 4-year deal, and then they went a different direction. He rightfully was pissed. I mean, childhood team, bought him out, came here, took less money. The Devils offered him more money at the time. Now he ended up winning a Stanley Cup in Tampa Bay and signing again. Sorry, little allergies. In Anaheim, that's whatever. I mean, we all have our own journey, but in retrospect, because you went into rebuild shortly thereafter, yeah, that was where the mistake lied. He was a fine player, had a knee injury, and Vigneault was an idiot. That's the Flyers fans, like we don't already know. Robert says, I saw the potential with Pionk, but Trouba's bigger, better in every way. Wait till the playoffs to see the difference. The other thing is this. Well, Trouba is not putting up the offensive numbers that Neal Pionk is. Well, great. Is that what Trouba's supposed to do? Isn't that what Adam Fox supposed to do on the Rangers and Nils Lundqvist? Isn't that their role to be the offensive guy? You couldn't play 6 kids on defense. He was 25, coming off a 50-point year. And again, $8 million is a lot. But you do $8 million when you think the cap's going up every year. This deal doesn't look as bad if the cap's going up. And then a pandemic happened, and the cap's not going up. So, it is what it is. Savior says James' opinion sucks. Peter says, turned out to be, Pionk might be a good player, but we don't need him on the team. Only problem with the trade is you overpay Trouba on the deal. Otherwise, you do the trade right now. Asa Luca, who think win the Calder Trophy next season. If I put my money, it's Quentin Byfield if he plays. Kid's got a bright future. Really, really does. If they didn't get Lafreniere, it would have been perfectly fine with Quentin Byfield. So, for all these people, oh, Neal Pionk. He wasn't going to do anything here. There wasn't a spot for him then. There ain't a spot for him now. So, that is what it is. Another coach in another situation was able to get more out of him. Cool. Not really worried as much about that at this point. Last topic for tonight, Mika Zibanejad. His future in New York. And as I've said on the show a couple of times, this is the biggest question facing the New York Rangers organization, without question. This is the problem, because this is going to decide a lot for them moving forward. And I've been having this discussion with many people around social media, likely some of you who I love interacting with in different Ranger groups that I'm in. Nothing is more fun than talking Rangers hockey for sure. The first argument, anti-Eichel, is this damaged good arguments. Okay. Price dictates that you know what you're getting. You're not giving up a ton of elite talent to go get this kid. Okay. But then they're like, well, Brian, if they go get go get Jack Eichel, they can't afford to pay Mika Zibanejad. I know. That's not the point. Because to me, I am more than perfectly fine letting Mika Zibanejad go away. That has nothing to do with Mika Zibanejad today, tomorrow, or the next year, and everything to do with what he is at 35 and 36. And when he is 30 years old and wants a 7-year deal or an 8-year deal at $10 million, I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a problem. $10 million to a 25-year-old is not $10 million to a 30-year-old. Big, big difference. And here's where I will disagree with more and more people, where they say, well, Eichel costs you assets and Mika doesn't. Yeah? Are you sure about that? Why don't you ask Pavel Buchnevich about Chris Kreider's contract and if that had anything to do with him being sent out of New York? If you don't think that giving Mika Zibanejad 10 a year for 7 or 8 is going to cost you assets, of course it's going to cost you assets. It's going to cost you a player or two that you're not going to want to lose when the cap is there. When you can't sign someone because he's making $10 million at an age that he shouldn't be making $10 million. Look at the deals that people like Seth Jones are getting on defense. Look, Fox is going to get paid. I'm the first person to say I thought Fox would sign for like 7.5. If we get Fox below 10 at this point, it's a steal. It is. It is. Look at what guys are getting paid. Guys who are nowhere near as good as him. Seth Jones stinks. Seth Jones stinks. Look at his numbers. His advanced stats, terrible. And all this stuff given up for him. I mean, look, you can say Fox will take a hometown discount to stay with New York, and I am not going to disagree with that. But a hometown discount from what? Because that number keeps getting higher and higher when all these losers get these. Look at what Darnell Nurse just signed for. It's just, call it what it is. Don't sit there and tell me that whether the assets are now or 3 years from now, Mika Zibanejad will cost you assets. He will. So don't say, well, you could just pay Mika and leave Eichel where he is. Yeah, you could, but not seeing it. James, give Mika a blank check. Yeah. So the problem with that, my friend, it's a salary cap. So you actually can't go above a certain level. And the more you pay one guy, the more you can't pay the others. And and the argument was brought up. I'm gonna miss this comment. I'm trying to scroll up to post this comment because somebody was just really ahead of me at the time. So just bear with me a quick second. I can't find it very clearly. I don't want to get too far off here, but here it is. Mike Salazzo. In 4 years, the cap will be up to cover his salary. Okay. So will their contract demands. Okay. When the cap is 85 and 90 million, you want more money. You look at what you're getting as a percentage of cap. Okay. So just because it only works with long, it's like buying a house and a mortgage, right? So like, yeah, you lock that price in at the mortgage. If mortgage rates go down, you might want to refinance, right? So you can't redo deals in hockey if the cap doesn't go up. So if somebody says I want 10% of cap, that right now is $8.15 million. 10% of cap at 90 would be 9. Fox is going to bank at the end of next year. This upcoming summer is going to be brutal for the Rangers because all these guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not even going to go off the top of my head, guys. I'm going to give it to you. Cap Friendly, one of my favorite websites because everything is there. Here are the following players who are currently on the roster who will need contracts in some way, shape, or form next year. Mika Zibanejad, Ryan Strome, Sammy Blais, Vitaly Kravtsov, Kaapo Kakko, Julian Gauthier, Kevin Rooney. Again, I'm just listing names. Adam Fox, Anthony Bitetto, Georgiev. Now, again, they're not going to sign all those guys. I'm just saying. These are the guys who are going to need deals. They currently appear to have $28.6 million available in cap. Okay. $18 million goes to Zibanejad and Fox. $10 million left. $10 million left to sign a second line center if it's not Strome. To pay Kravtsov and Kakko. And the backup goaltender. It's not going to work. It is not going to work. And I'm telling you right now, Zibanejad, as I think the world of him, he's the number one center on this team. I don't know if he'd be number one center on a cup-winning team, number one center on this team. If he's making 10, and Panarin's making 11.6, and Trouba's making 8, and Kreider's making 6.5, just to go to Boris's comment, because I mean that we had this. I think I put the poll up on BlueTruth's Twitter of what contract was more problematic, Kreider's or Trouba's. I will still maintain it's Chris Kreider, because there's only so many spots you can put Chris Kreider. You technically have, Trouba can play, but I think both sides of the D, at least the one side, whatever. The point is, the reason that Buchnevich is not here is not because they don't have the cap space right now, because they do. They still have $8.8 million worth of open cap space, despite the fact that $4.4 million is dead, James. So they knew they were staring a brick wall in the face next offseason. Yes, they have 3.4 in dead space next offseason. It'll be less the year. It'll be 0 the year after that. I understand that. If you pay this guy and you lock into this, it'll be a no movement clause, right? Because that's what the Rangers do. You're going to lose somebody you don't want to lose. So again, please don't come at me and say that Mika doesn't cost you assets. He does cost you assets. Panarin technically cost you assets because, again, and you give Panarin 11.6 because, again, you feel the cap is going to continue to go up, and it hasn't. Look, it's nobody's fault. I'm not going to get into a political discussion tonight, but this is what the way of the world is right now. You had no fans in the stands for none of the playoffs the year before and very few the year after. They need to get that money back. That's why the cap's not moving. It'll go up $1 million in 2022 to 82.5. And they signed these great TV deals now with ESPN and with TNT and Turner. So it should fix itself at some point. Like, it should get back to some level of going up. So will the contract demands, which is why I would have preferred to lock up Igor Shesterkin for longer than 4 years, because he's going to go a lot of money in 4 years. Now, potentially the best thing that could happen to the Rangers is Kakko has not broken out yet. So that deal might not be too punitive. But again, if you keep bridging guys, then that next deal is even more. Like, you want to buy out some of those UFA years. Julian, if you think about it, 4 players in the lease cost, about half their cap. But Julian, would you rather get, Tavares is the one that I think is going to be in a mistake. Matthews is elite. Marner is elite. And frankly, Nylander's contract's not that bad. So, Chris needs to re-sign Laffy and Kakko. They'll both be coming up. John says, I agree. Mika's not a one center and a cup winner. James says, 1C is irreplaceable. You're assuming Eichel comes in, and frankly, it sounds like he shouldn't be playing next season altogether. I am assuming Eichel is here. Yes. Absolutely, I'm assuming that, James. And as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to say again, if the Rangers do not go out and get another center, Mika Zibanejad owns them. Mika Zibanejad's agent is going to go in to the negotiations like Jerry Maguire saying, show me the money. Because what in the hell are they going to do? Not give him the contract? What choice do they have? He can name his price. What are they going to say? No? What option do they have? Okay, then my client's going to go to free agency. Okay, then what? And don't be surprised they're having these conversations now. Because they need to know where they stand. They have no centers after the season. And this is the thing about Schneider. Trouba's got to go. They can't get rid. Trouba's got a no movement clause. He's stuck here for at least a couple more years. They might be able to get out of it towards the end of it. But that's why I said, why are we not willing to move Braden Schneider to go out and get a center, because they need a center more than they need Braden Schneider, because right-hand side of your D is locked up. Trouba contractually, Fox because he's Fox, and you like Nils Lundqvist, and he's cheap. Now, if Schneider can play left or Lundqvist can play left, it changes things. I will wait to see if that happens. But that's why I said Tony D was always going to be a transitory player on his team. He wasn't going to be here past this upcoming season anyway, so it's not a huge loss. It really isn't. I'm not going to get anything else from a D'Angelo on the ice specifically. It is not a massive loss. He was going to be here anyway. Chris's Capo is going to break out, and that is a double-edged sword. Because if he does, it's good for the team. It's bad for the salary cap. Like I said about Adam Fox. Adam Fox win the Norris is awesome until he used that against you in negotiations. That is not that awesome anymore. Peter, you have to be able to replace Zibanejad. Not too many 25-year-old centers to be had. Unless you get Eichel, you have no choice. I agree. Again, I would do that. I would give him another year to bring the cap hit down because I would have to. Again, what choice do they have? Like you said, they're owned by Mika Zibanejad in those negotiations. There is nothing they can say. What's he going to say? I imitated the tweets. Go, oh, this is, it's fine. So, I don't see any scenario where the Rangers don't address something, and they refuse to draft centers, by the way, might I add, because they keep taking wingers in defense. Braden Schneider shouldn't be a Ranger. Some other center should have been picked there. Brennan Hoffman might be a good player. Should have been a center, because they don't have any centers in the system that are elite to take on these roles. They did this to themselves. It's not their fault that when they got up there in the top of the draft, there was two wingers that fell into them. It's fine. That is what it is. But you got to address your center issue longer term, because you're going to make it harder on yourself the longer this goes. Julian. Yeah, so Kreider's got no movement clause. That's the biggest problem. If Kreider didn't have a no movement clause, this would be a lot easier, because you could give him away, but you can't give him away because he has no movement clause. He dictates where he goes. And if you're him, well, hey, listen, I negotiated this, so I'm not going to just say you can send me whatever. Now, it was brought up, and Ryan Eaton's comments actually brings it back. So I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that Mika Zibanejad is going to waive his no movement clause to be traded to Buffalo. I think that's not going to happen. I think that, Brooks said it best, that's just not going to happen. It would solve a lot of problems, because then the ancillary parts of the deal are a lot less. Obviously, if you're giving up Zibanejad, you're not giving up Vitaly Kravtsov, right? Because it just makes sense. If Zibanejad is the center, then you hold on to Strome. It's not what you want to do either. If they end up making the deal without Zibanejad or Strome, and they do Kravtsov or Hedl, then you can move Strome for a guy like Riley Smith from Las Vegas. Makes a lot of sense. Again, knows the coach. Coach knows him. So I am not of the belief that Zibanejad will waive it. I wouldn't if I were him, not to go to Buffalo. And if I'm Buffalo, I don't really want him to be the centerpiece of my deal, because he might just walk in a year anyway. So he doesn't have a whole lot of value. Strome has more, because I think they could keep Strome. Zibanejad will be more desirable to another team. Could get paid somewhere. Strome, I think, Hedl actually will probably be more desirable, because you control him longer. Strome can get swapped. Pete says, what do you think the chances are of Laf converting to a center? Well, the funny thing about that is that supposedly, and we're going to see this in real life this year, but in Gallant's system, it doesn't really matter. They kind of move around a little bit. The center doesn't really matter as much. In Vegas didn't really have centers, and they went to the finals. We will see. But at the same time, I don't think that's in the cards. Can I rule it out? No. I don't think it's in the cards. James says, no movement clauses aren't that big of a deal. See, this is where you and I disagree. So you're very much anti-buyout for reasons you explained, and that's fine. But then it's no movement clauses are fine. But they're not fine, because He will dictate where he goes if he wants to go. He doesn't have to go anywhere. You sit there and rock. They agreed to this. The guys that agreed to this, you know whose fault this is? Gorton and JD. And you know who doesn't have to deal with the consequences of Kreider's contract? Gorton and JD. And like I will always say, GMs will offer these long-term deals and all these big money deals to players because you know what? They need to win right now. If they don't win, they're going to get fired the way that Gorton was. And if they win, nobody cares. And if they don't win, you're fired. This contract's somebody else's problem, and now it's Chris Drury's problem. So. James taking shots. Sabre taking shots at James. That's all right. Love you guys. Look, this is this in many ways is going to dictate how successful this rebuild is because, look, you can say you like Zibanejad. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not a good player. He is a very good player, but let's be fair. Tough start to last year. A lot of his points came against the Flyers, who blow, and the Sabres, who blow, and the Devils, who blow. Wasn't really a factor in other games. Sniper, yes. Kind of every time the Rangers get into the no movement clause, the ghost of Hank's contract smiles. You know what? You know what happens? You know what happens, James? When you get no movement clauses, you get buyouts, and you hate those. Dan Girardi, no movement clause, buyout. Hank, no movement clause, buyout. Shattenkirk, no movement clause, buyout. Pick one. Can't like them both. Can't hate them both. Can't like one, I'm sorry. Can't like one, not the other. It's getting late. Anyway, that's all I got tonight. Now, you remember 2 weeks ago, the last time we got together and talked Rangers hockey, which, again, I love all the interaction from you guys. I can't tell you how much fun this is for me. We've been on for about an hour and 8 minutes, and it's felt like 10 minutes. I'm always worried sometimes, like, will I have enough to fill an hour? And then I'm way over. Because that's what Rangers hockey is. It's what we all love. It's what brings us all together. The common bond that we all share is the love of this team and, frankly, the abusive relationship we're in with this team. So, again, thank you all for interacting with me. If you haven't yet liked the page, please do. I would appreciate that. Again, you can all the content that we put out there, the breaking news I try to stay up on as much as I possibly can. I will always post when we're doing shows, so feel free to, again, follow the Facebook page at BlueTruthSB, follow the Twitter at BlueTruthSB. Haven't made an Instagram yet, but I'm thinking about it. And all of the shows are available on demand after the shows are there. They're recorded, but I also then post them to our YouTube channel as well, so feel free to subscribe to that as well. Love seeing the numbers grow. You know, we're up to 450 followers. I've been doing this for 2 months, maybe 2.5, right after the start of the season. So it's cool that, you know, people are really getting into it. Like it is a lot of fun for me. So I'm glad it's a lot of fun for you. John, Rock coming in late. Reeves is a waste. I was waiting for you all night, bud. I was waiting for you all night to come in because I knew you were going to bring that in. John, great show. Thank you, brother. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you watching most weeks. I think you're on, so I appreciate that. Mike Salaza, thank you. It was fun. It was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. And that's, you know, a lot of what's fulfilling about doing this is being able to talk about this topic we all love with each other. James, not take the last word, says, Shady was bought out because of the no movement clause. He was bought out because coming off a bad year where he was injured. We gave up on him and are still paying for it. They went into rebuild. He was not going to be here. That's why. Ryan Eaton, first time viewing, good shit. Keep up the content. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. I love doing this stuff with you guys. Follow, like the page, like the shows, share, invite your other Ranger fan friends. We'll have a lot of good fun. I'll be going live from the Garden, God willing, we get back there this year. Savior, thank you. So, guys, I don't know where an hour and 10 minutes went, but believe me when I tell you, an hour and 10 minutes went. So thank you for watching episode 9 of BlueTruth. Probably be back in a couple of weeks. It is August the 12th. It's getting into the fantasy football draft season, so I'm sure that'll be consuming a lot of my thoughts. And I'm also going to be studying for my CFP designation. I'm in financial planning, so that's my next thing. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't have too much of an issue with my ability to take time for these, but that's a longer process. It's like a 7-8 month thing. But again, thank you very much for watching the show, and we'll see you soon. Take care.